Good morning. I think we'll get started. We're a little after 10, but people can pop in as they're ready. If you registered to attend the Introduction to Employee Ownership and ESOPs, you have come to the right place. My name is Chris Dodge. I'm a business advisor with the Maine Small Business Development Center, hosted by the University of Southern Maine. And I am located in our remote offices in Augusta and Skowhegan. Thanks for joining us today. I have worked in time at the end of the session for questions, but if you think of something as we're going along, feel free to drop that in the chat. Who is the Maine SBDC? We offer no-cost confidential business advising to Maine businesses and entrepreneurs and have over 45 years of history. We have 13 advisors spread across the state of Maine geographically, so that we can meet with you in person or obviously virtually if that's what you prefer. Today, what we're going to cover are different options for exit planning. So we'll touch upon open market and family transition sales, but this webinar is intended to focus on employee ownership. So we'll talk about when and why and how you might consider that, some of the benefits, the pros and cons of worker-owned cooperatives. We'll kind of break out what the difference is between a worker-owned cooperative and an ESOP, and we'll provide some actionable steps and some resources to explore. So I just wanted to provide a little context about why this topic is so relevant right now. So the next couple of slides will just give you some graphs and some statistics about this. But across the United States, half of business owners are over 50. And if you go to rural regions, they're over 60. And so if you look at the graph, more than half of our businesses are looking to exit within the next 10 years. So some planning needs to be put in place now. We are in a period that is dubbed the Silver Tsunami, and that is largely because of the aging baby boomer population. So those people are looking to retire and go into the next phase of life. And it's important because trillions of dollars are going to change hands in the next 10 to 20 years. So obviously trying to have a plan in place for that is going to be better. Most owners want to retire by the time they're 65 and are confident they can, but actually less than a third of people have taken any steps. 62% say they find it overwhelming, and 74% are stressed about deciding what to do with their businesses. And I would say that's pretty consistent with what I hear when I'm talking to clients. Most say they really don't know and they get a little antsy trying to talk about it. And so, why does it matter? And I think just in the Northeast, and by Northeast, we're talking New England plus New York, there are over 200,000 businesses with employees where the owner is nearing retirement. So that's not taking into account any solopreneurs. This is employee businesses that have employees. And I think this next statistic is pretty shocking, and hopefully it's going to motivate some people to give some thought to this. When a business goes onto the open market to be sold, only 20% of those businesses actually sell. And in recent years, there's been a reduction in family transitions. So we really need to be thinking more and more about this. Legacy businesses that have been around for over 25 years are more likely to just close than to get sold. And the smaller and the more rural the business, the greater the likelihood of liquidation and closure when the owner retires. So what we're trying to encourage and teach people about is how to plan for tomorrow, thinking about what you want, knowing what options are out there, and figuring out a way to achieve those goals. So, you've got to know what you want, you've got to define some goals. So, that can include your timeline, that can include how much money you expect to walk away with. And for some people, it's knowing who you want to take this business over. So, why does the exit strategy fail? Lack of proper planning or absence of a plan, the inability or the failure to identify financial objectives, liquidity issues. So we're talking about how much cash is in the business, family succession issues. Certainly, there can be a lot of personalities involved, a lot of different factors that contribute to a family succession being problematic. Sometimes it's inadequate successor management or leader development. So, one thing I tell people to ask themselves is if you were to take a 2 week vacation, do you have an employee that can run your business? If your answer to that is no, then you would have inadequate successor management. You need other people to be able to know and do what you do. Another big mistake is an unrealistic business value. People will put a value on their business based on the amount of work they know they put in or some of their own personal financial success. But that may not be the market value of the business. And also an improper deal structure. So sometimes that's a result of hurrying the deal and trying to get out quickly and not having a long-term plan. So, some of the common mistakes, and I have heard these in the last 12 months from my own clients. I know what my business is worth. I'm too busy running the company to sit down and make a plan. Oh, that's never going to happen to me. I've got all kinds of time for this. Retirement plan, that's my business. I didn't have to set money aside because I know I'll sell my business and use that money to retire on. You can't beat Uncle Sam. So when you start to take into consideration what your options are for the future, you basically have three. An open market sale. So that is when you go out, you list your business, similar to how people list their homes, and you put a price on it and you hope that you can get your asking price. There's the family transition, the legacy business, where you're going to pass that on to members of your family, and selling to employees. And again, that is where our focus today is going to be. So before you choose which strategy you want to consider, a few things you should do. First, define your goals. So again, that is what is your financial goal? What's your timeline? And, think about your role in this process. Are you going to leave the business cold turkey, or do you want to be helping out with the transition and the training? Selling your business isn't always the same as retiring. And then you're going to need to understand the difference between ownership, governance, and management. We'll talk about that soon. So we are here to help support you in achieving your goals, and we'll highlight a few key factors for success. So when you're trying to begin the process of creating an exit strategy, think like a buyer. Try to put yourself on the other side of the table and what would look attractive about your business to a buyer. You also need to identify, cultivate, and lock in your key leadership. As a business owner, you're certainly part of that. But what other employees are going to want to continue in this business and have a role in it after you've retired? Another big one that I feel like people put off quite a bit is having some pretty candid talks with professionals such as your lawyer, your finance and tax advisor, and other business advisors such as us. And there are organizations out there that focus specifically on employee ownership and helping you transition to that if that's what you want. What else should you do? Take a long vacation. So just simply getting yourself out of the weeds of the day-to-day of your business and having an opportunity to be a little more strategic in how you plan. So again, what should your exit strategy include? So an exit strategy is your planned approach to transfer ownership of the business while maximizing value and meeting personal and financial goals. The purpose of doing this is to make sure that things go smoothly. And obviously, you want to minimize taxes and any legal implications. And you really want that timing to line up with how you are viewing your future. So, again, some of the common exit paths are sale to a third party, family transition, um, management buyout, employee buyout. So let's just quickly touch on the two that are not the focus of today, passing the business to family. And that just means transferring or selling the ownership to either your kids or other members of your family. And some of the pluses to this are preserving your family legacy. You can do this gradually and train members as they come of age and become ready to take part in this. And there can be tax advantages on both sides of this, and there can be flexible financing. Typically, business owners are more willing to finance their family members than they are on a third party sale. There are challenges, family conflict, and I've seen this in a number of situations, and it can really hold up the process or completely derail it. Sometimes the family isn't ready to take this on, and there is some expectation that you will be equitable among members of the family, and that may not be practical. We can also sell on the open market. So again, that is just going out, selling it to a third party. A lot of times it's a competitor that's going to buy your business and take it in. The big advantage for this is if you can be part of the 20% that can do this, you might be able to maximize your financial return. It's probably a clean break for the owner. They're probably going to give you a date that you will just wrap up and you can go retire and head to the beach or whatever brings you joy. It's also, you might bring buyers in that have a different view and can bring something new to this business. Also can be challenging because you need to go through the process of getting a valuation, marketing the sale, negotiating the sale. So again, you're talking about dealing with a lot of different professionals, and the opportunity is there at each point for things to fall through. The other thing that a lot of business owners worry about is disclosing sensitive information, such as your tax returns, to outsiders. In this case, certainly employing a non-disclosure agreement is advisable. And the last thing, but very real thing, is that there is risk for your employees feeling uncertain and leaving, and same thing with your customers. They may just decide they don't know what's happening and they'll look for somebody else. So, why consider employee ownership? So, basically, you're going to be working with a pool of people that are already invested in your business and have knowledge of your business. And they're already available to you. You don't have to go out and look for them. The buyers are right there. And statistics show that it is good for business. So employee ownership actually leads to job creation. So 2.5% more jobs, and they're one-third less likely to lay off workers during a down period. These businesses have shown higher productivity and profitability and lower rates of bankruptcy, closure, and loan default. It's also good for the workers. So it's known to attract younger people and keep them with a 33% higher median wage, 92% higher household wealth, and 53% higher median job tenure. It also improves worker income and wealth. Excuse me. Um, Dramatically higher household wealth for workers, especially those close to retirement, and it narrows the gender and racial wealth gap. So we're going to just touch on the basics and pros and cons of ESOPs, but again, our focus is going to be on employee ownership, cooperative ownership. Um, an ESOP is a qualified defined contribution benefit plan invested in the sponsoring employer's stock. The shares are held in trust for the benefit of the employees. The ESOP will borrow money to buy the shares, and they're allocated to employees. Longer term employees get more shares, and the ESOP buys the shares back when the worker retires. There can be significant tax benefits for the owner and the business. Some of the disadvantages are it is very costly to develop an ESOP, so a lot of businesses just simply can't afford to do it. 150,000 to 300,000 is a normal cost of implementation, with 75 to $150,000 a year to maintain. So that is an ongoing expense for the business every year. Also, another big concern with ESOPs is there's a lot of regulatory scrutiny from the government. So, a lot of record keeping, a lot of regulation to know about. So, again, that will often require you hiring professionals to stay on task with that. There's not as much motivation for younger workers, and it doesn't really address the need for a management transition plan. And as I stated, you will need many highly paid outside advisors. So what's a cooperative? A business jointly owned and controlled by its workers and that operates for the benefit of its workers. Here are some of the basics of that. The owner's creating a ready-made market for the business, and it's a membership-based corporation. Workers buy a share and they are a direct owner of the business. So one member gets one share, which is equivalent to one vote. And another important piece of this is workers don't have to be owners. So for whatever reason, if an employee anticipates maybe being there for a short time or has really limited resources, they do not have to be an owner, and an owner has no guarantee of employment. And the members get a share of the net income. So the bottom line, there is a share that you receive a portion of the profits. Tax advantages that go along with this. You can do a 1042 rollover, which means you can defer capital gains if you're a C Corp. And preference for stock sales versus asset sales can reduce taxes. Tax advantages for the company, the cooperative, include that any net income that's distributed to members is tax deductible. The member share of profits are taxed at individual income tax rates. So no payroll self-employed tax, employment tax, and 20% qualified business deduction. And the IRS requires a minimum 20% distribution of the total allocation to the members. So who's a good candidate? Clearly, this isn't going to work for everybody. So things that will get evaluated is what's the market, who are the customers, the vendors and suppliers, the workforce for the business, cash flow and profits, leadership and legacy. So all of these things are going to get factored in to see if you're a good candidate to do this. So how are these part of exit planning? And so basically you could do an immediate exit is lack of planning. Sometimes the owner has died or the business has gone bankrupt. Then there are phased exits that require a lot of planning, very structured leadership, development, and stage transition. And then there's restructuring for growth. So improving the performance of the business and sustainability by vesting the employees into the business. Advantages. It's considered a very flexible and friendly insider sale. So the people that are getting this highly sensitive information are already people that are there and may know it. There is greater control in this process, so lower risk. The owners and buyers are already aware of each other's strengths and weaknesses and can kind of play to that as they structure the deal. And the owner can remain in control until it's paid off, should they choose to. Just like anything, there are associated challenges, such as just being unfamiliar, entering a new role, limited financial resources, ability, experience. And this is, I think, a big hanging point for a lot of people. There's an assumption that each employee needs to have a lot of liquid resources to become an owner. And that may be how it's done in some instances, but there are other structures that allow employees to become owners through payroll deduction, and things like that. So they don't necessarily have to have a lot of liquid assets to become an owner. These processes do take a while. So for an owner that wants to get out quickly, they need to be prepared for a little bit of a longer departure timeline. And the employees and the owner, there may be differing perceptions of the value of the business. So there are three distinct transitions we're going to talk about. Ownership transition. So we're going to talk about who owns the business and in what form. The governance transition. So who makes the big picture, medium to long range planning and strategic decisions and the policies. And then the management transition is who makes the day-to-day, in the moment operational decisions. So governance will answer what and why questions. Management transition is answering the how and the when questions. A group of work, and we're going to just use this little acronym, eases into ownership. So that includes explore, assess, structure, execute, and support. So the first phase is exploring. So this is when the business owner is giving this some thought and is like, okay, let's put this out there and see what kind of response we get. So they'll organize an all-employee meeting and introduce the idea. From there, they go to the assessing phase. And there's usually a steering committee of employees that come together and say that they're going to represent the other employees, get the information, do the due diligence, present that information to their peers. Once you get through that and things are still moving forward, you've got to develop a structure. So that means the worker cooperative and the current owner have to come to an agreement on the price and the terms and the conditions. Once we get through that, we have to execute. So finalize the transition documentation and financing. And then once the deal has closed, the post-transaction education, training, and coaching. And this is a pretty long timeline. It may only be 5 steps, but depending on just everybody's comfort with it, it could go slow, very slow, or it could move along steadily. So in the explore phase, the business owners already made a decision that they're going to look into this, and they have some idea of what they want for evaluation and how it would be financed. And they also have some ideas about how they'd like to see the ownership and management moving forward. So they'll take that meeting to express all of this to the employees, educate them on what a worker-owned cooperative is and the process of a worker cooperative buyout, options for financing, and answer questions. So you can see by this that even at this first phase, the owner of the business has already done quite a bit of homework to figure out that this is something that they want to do, and they're prepared to answer questions from their employees about it. So in the assessing phase, what's going to happen is the steering committee is going to do their due diligence. So this is the employees on a committee looking to get answers to things like how the cooperative will form, the business development, the financial development, and the actual transaction development. Step 3 is the structure. So now the due diligence has been done, all parties are on board. So you actually have to negotiate and agree on what's going to be in the purchase and sale agreement. So that's the price, the terms, the financing, expected management and governance of the company, and where the current owner, the seller of the business, is going to fit into this process. And there's a lot of different ways that that can play out. Step 4 is actually executing this. So finalizing the transaction. So you want to incorporate the cooperative. Then you'll have a members meeting to approve the purchase and authorize execution of all of the documents and financial agreements, and then execute the purchase and sale agreement and whatever financing is in place for that. And then 5 is the post-transaction support. So now the business is owned by the employees and the members. So they're going to need some technical assistance for ongoing training and mentoring and just making sure that the business is set up for success with its new owners. So at this point, I'm going to open this to questions. This was certainly kind of an overview of the process. Really hard to get into the weeds because it's different for every business. All of the particulars can really vary. But happy to try and answer anything that you have now. Feel free to put it in the chat or just speak right up. Okay. We, as SBDC advisors, are available to give advice and support through this process, help you consider your exit strategy and what steps to take. And we can also connect you with resources such as some of these outside advisors that will help you actually execute this and put it into play. So reach out to any of us through our network. We're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube.
We have one question, Chris. What do you mean by you can't beat Uncle Sam?
Um, so sometimes when someone's considering the sale of a business, they think they're going to avoid certain taxes. So they choose a particular option thinking that they can somehow dodge paying taxes. And that usually does not work out. So that I wouldn't even consider that as an option of trying to do.
Okay, we have another question. What is the cost of creating a collaborative or cooperative versus the ESOP?
So that is going to greatly vary depending on how many employees we're talking about and who you decide to work with for professionals. So the ESOP tends to be a more costly process.
Got it. And then we have a message here. I work for Spinnaker. I think I pronounced that correctly. Spinnaker Trust in Portland. We provide ESOP trustee services. Feel free to reach out if considering an ESOP.
All
Interesting.
right.
So,
And we also we have resources for worker cooperatives available as well. So don't hesitate to contact us with any questions. Well, thank you all for your time and being here today. And I hope that I've given you some information to move forward and happy to answer questions in the future.
Hey,
Have a great day.
Chris, before you go, I had a question on the cooperative. Like, what's an ideal number, or is there a minimum number of participants to create a cooperative? Like, if you're a super small business and you only have a couple employees, is it, is that going to be a model that would work, or do you need, five or more?
I think ideally you'd be looking at 10 or more.
Okay.
Um, I I think certainly, if you had a group of them, a smaller group, but they were long-term employees that were like deeply invested in the company, you could do it with a smaller number. But I think the larger, the 10 and up is primarily who has showed interest in it so far.
Thanks.